right, y'all, I did it again. Started cooking, and then I was like, as about to getting good, I was like, oh gosh, I could have just shown what I'm doing today. Well, today I'm making pasta, some veggie turkey meatloaf, and some bok choy for dinner, for a Saturday night dinner. Anyway, but I have started a little bit already, so I'm going to show you what I've done so far, and then you'll get to see where I'm going with it next. Okay, y'all, I already made the pasta, and this is the pasta, and I have, of course, I boil it with salt in the water, salt and a little bit of olive oil, but then I also, after it's out, I have, and I'm going to show you my container. So it's glazed here in some olive oil with some A La Arvy seasoning and some herbs, as you can see. And yes, they are shaped like hearts. Yeah, this is the heart-shaped pasta that I got. All right, this is what the water looks like that I boiled it in. As you can see, it's full of goodness to make sure that it tastes properly. And then this is my olive oil, and as you can see, I have in here some A La Arvy seasonings. So this is what I glaze the pasta with after I'm finished boiling it. All right, so here I have some ground turkey. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I usually put a little bit of lime or lemon juice or so in my turkey to get that, what we call in the islands, that riciness, that kind of, you know, freshy kind of taste and smell from it. So anyway, so I have it in here and about to season it up really good with my trusty A La Arvy seasoning. No, I cannot tell you what is in my seasoning, but you have an idea from my previous episodes. And then, of course, I'm going to add some breadcrumbs, and I've already smashed up the breadcrumbs. So that's after I'm finished seasoning it up. And then, as I mentioned to you, it was veggie meatloaf. So I've already prepared the veggies that I'm going to mix in with this. So, but before I do that, I'm going to season this bad boy up. And after I'm finished preparing this, then I'll add this to it, mix it up well, and then I'll add the breadcrumbs and a little bit of this before putting it in the oven. And I did mention to you that I'm making some bok choy. So this is the bok choy that I'm going to be preparing on the side as well. All right, stay tuned. Oh, and I did not mention that I'm also going to add a little bit of baking powder to this whole concoction by the time I'm finished. Okay, I'm adding some A La Arvy seasoning to this. Okay, I'm going to mix this up and then I'm going to go from there. So just adding a little bit more of the seasoning, just a little, not too much, because you know you don't want things salty. But my A La Arvy seasoning is it's well prepared, so it'll be fine. What I'm doing will be fine. And by the way, I don't know if I did not mention it, but this is already seasoned and it could eat as is and taste good as is. So you make sure that this is fine as well before you add that to this, okay? Okay, as you can see, this is already mixed. Come on, focus camera. This is already mixed up. And so next step is to put this in here. All right, I've added, by the way, did I tell you what was in my greens? Probably not. So I have herbs from my garden, of course. I have some collards in there, and it's all seasoned up to taste. I have some garlic as well, some minced garlic. And everything is seasoned nicely, so I'm about to just mix this up really good. All right, as you can see, it's all mixed up. Next, I'm going to add the breadcrumbs. And then I'm going to mix that up nicely as well. All right. And then along with the breadcrumbs, I am going to add maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll do a tablespoon of this. You know, as y'all should know by now, I don't measure anything. So I'll probably do about a tablespoon of this. All right. Okay, of course, I forgot to mention that I also have some asparagus on the side. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit. It's already, you know, has some seasoning in it already. But I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of the A La Arvy on the top here to give it that extra little oomph, you know. And there you have it. By the way, the sides, I mentioned bok choy, but it's actually bok choy, broccoli, cabbage, pea pods, and green onion. So I'm going to cook this and season it up. Okay, before I mix this up and get it ready, I'm gonna actually grease the pans. I may not need 2 pans, but I'm preparing 2 pans just in case. So I'm gonna go ahead and grease this one first in preparation for this. Okay, the breadcrumb, the baking powder, it's all mixed in now. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of this to it, and then it'll be time to put it in the pan. So I've greased this one. I didn't grease this one yet. Let's see what kind of, if I need to do 2 or not. So this is where we are so far. Okay, I put 4 teaspoons of my mixture here into this. And I do this because I don't like dry meatloaf, especially when I'm making veggie meatloaf, okay? So anyway, this is what we have in here. I'm going to mix this up and then I'm going to put it in the pan. And by the way, I have the oven already preheated to 350. Okay, I have a whole half a pan left, so I'm going to go ahead and grease this one and let's make it 2 pans. Let's see what it looks like. I didn't put it all the way to the top. Yeah, so it's panned, and I'm just going to smoothen it out a little bit on the top with the spoon. Sometimes I take a fork and I just, you know, sort of kind of do streaks on the top with the foil, but I'm not going to do that today. Just smoothing it out a little bit. And by the way, one thing I did not mention, when I added the tablespoon of baking powder, I also added a tablespoon of flour. Okay. All right. Time to put it in the oven at 350. I'm going to put it in the oven at 350. About 45 minutes to an hour. I'm going to check it to make sure it's fully cooked, and then I'm going to take the foil paper off and let it brown. See you soon. By the way, I'm going to put a little bit of this oil on the top here to help with the moisture, okay? All right. Top has some grease on the top. Time to put the foil on and in the oven it goes. Okay, they're in the oven. See you in about 45 minutes to an hour. I made an extra batch of pasta just in case. About to get this bok choy veggie mixture right. All right, I'm finished cooking this, and so I'm gonna add the rest of this olive oil and seasoning mix to this, and voila, the bok choy veggie mixture is ready. All right, now that I'm waiting for the meatloaf to be finished and everything else is cooked and waiting, I'm gonna go ahead and make some gravy to go with that meatloaf. So I'm starting off with some herbs in here, as you see. And if you watched my videos before, you know that my fresh herbs from my garden, I usually chop them up, mince them up, put them in a Ziploc bag and put them in the freezer so that when it's time to cook, I don't have to be cutting things up. I have them ready to go. So that's what you see here. And you remember that container that I had with the olive oil and the seasoning? I started off with a water base. I don't, you know, if you've been watching, you know I don't use oils and butters. I don't cook with those things intentionally for spite. And if I do, very bare minimum, okay? Anyway, so this is that glass. I've just added some water, getting as much of the ingredients into there. I'm going to put that in there, start that as my base. And you remember this container that I used to mix up the ground turkey and all of the goodies? So I added some water in here, got all the goodies down in here, and I'm going to add some of that to the base of my gravy, okay? All right. Okay, so I've added the water that was in the olive oil and seasoning glass. I'm going to add a little bit of this, and then I'm going to wait for it to boil and then go from there. Okay, so in here has the ingredients I mentioned before, the water with the olive oil and seasoning, and then I added actually all of the water from the pan that I was mixing up the ground turkey meatloaf mixture in. And what's important is that because the pan that had the ground turkey, it was uncooked turkey, you got to make sure that this bad boy boils properly so that any meatloaf remnants that's in the water is cooked properly. So no tasting of anything until that thing is cooked properly. Okay, so I've decided to make a bigger pan of gravy, which is why I added all of the water instead. So anyway, so I'm gonna leave this here, let it boil. As you can see, it's starting to collect. You can see where some of that meat was cooking, so it needs to cook. So anyway, I'm gonna cover this pan and I'm gonna let it continue to boil. And in about another 15 minutes or so, I'll add other ingredients. I need to make sure that it's properly cooked. I don't play that. All right, speak soon. All right, so you see how I let that boil down a little bit? And as you can see, that residual ground turkey mixture, it is now cooked. So now I can taste the sauce, taste this, add my seasonings to it, including my trusty A La Arvy seasoning. And then I'm going to show you what I do next to thicken it all up. All right, as you can see, I seasoned up this bad boy really good. So I have the taste that I want. So now is the critical part, yeah? So what I'm going to do here is to show you, I have a flour in this container. If I have a mug with a fork. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn the stove down a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of this sauce in here. I'm going to get some more. All right, as you can see, this is the amount that I got in here. And you see it's a sauce, but I want it to be a gravy, right? So that's what the flour is for. So let me show you what's next. So once you take some out of there, you leave this, let it continue to boil in a more simmered fashion. I turned it down, so it's going to simmer down in a few minutes. But then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add, depending on how thick you want your sauce, okay? So I'm going to add a little less than a tablespoon. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just do the tablespoon. But what's important is the fork. You got to mix it up, and you got to make sure that it's all those clumps and stuff. You got to make sure that it is homogeneous. Okay, so I'm going to do that and I'll be back. All right, so as you can see, this is mixed up nicely and it's looking like a gravy already in the bowl. So now I'm going to add that into this, and then I'm going to stir it around. Okay, and as I stir it around, I'm going to just rinse this out with a little more of the liquidy one. There we go. So I'm going to stir this around, and as I stir it around, it's going to get nice and thick. Again, depends on how thick you want your gravy, determines how much flour and how much liquid you take out, okay? But the whole concept is there. And see, you didn't need to use no bunch of oils, no bunch of nothing. You're going to see in a minute. All right, this needs to, you just keep stirring until it starts to thicken up to the liking that you want. And you don't want it to get too thick, then you take it off the stove whenever it's, to your liking, okay? All right, but the important thing and the key for all of this is to make sure that the sauce has the flavor that you want, so that when you thicken it up, you don't have to be trying to figure out, oh my gosh, let me add this and add that to an already thickened sauce. You understand? It's not going to be tasting very well when you do it that way. All righty, I'll be back to show you the final product. All right, it's time to take this out so it can brown. All right. All right, you see how moist? I don't know if you could tell how moist that is, but it is very, very moist. Okay, all right, so now I'm gonna put it back in until it brown. I'm going to let it brown for about another 15, 20 minutes, or until it has the color that I would like it to have. And you see how it's pulled away from the side, almost like when you're cooking a cake, yeah? This one, you can see not as visible as this one, but okay. I'm gonna put it back in, let it brown. One thing I did not show you is that, you know, just like how you do a cake where you take a knife and you stick it in to make sure nothing comes out on there. So, yep. Yep. All right, so it's cooked on the inside. I let it cook for an hour, by the way, before I took the foil paper off. So now it's time for it to brown. I put it up to about 425 to expedite the browning. I got the consistency that I would like, so I'm just gonna transfer it over to a smaller pot. And then it's almost time to take the meatloaf out from browning, and then it'll be good to go. Dinner is ready. Got the heart-shaped pasta, got the asparagus, got the bok choy veggie mixture, got some bow ties, got the meatloaves. They look good, eh? Smell good too. Got the gravy. All right, time to plate. All right, just showing you what the inside look like. Look at all of that goodness. And this is what the plate looked like before I add any gravy to it. Hey, check it out, check this out, check this out. All right, I'm gonna add some gravy to it, and then it'll be plated. Okay, so this is what it's like with the gravy on. This is without the gravy, and so I'm about to put some gravy on the other one, and that'll be it, folks. Thank you so much for staying with me today for another episode of Cooking with A La Arvy. All right, then, hope to see you at the next episode. Take care, everyone. Bye. Sparkles.